The competition here at Blast Fall Final is in full swing. How has it been so far from your perspective?
I think it has delivered what we were hoping for so far. I think we wanted the favorites to show up and play good Counter-Strike. FaZe have done it. Heroic have done it. Na'Vi also played quite well against Flux. So at least on the top heavy side of the bracket, I think people are delivering. But we still see some teams that we didn't really expect in trouble, just like G2, for example, who are actually fighting for survival today.
You mentioned G2, and that's also a team I want to talk about here. They missed the major in Rio after a lackluster RMR run and got 2-0 yesterday. Are you worried on their behalf?
Yeah, of course. I'm extremely worried. When you see the news coming out that the coach is jumping ship, you see their manager Maniac as well leaving. Of course, it's a black box. It's hard to know what's happening from the outside, but it gives an idea that the times are tumultuous. And I don't really know how easy it was for them to be productive during that time. I know from my experience as a player, that it can be quite hard to miss a tournament where everybody's at. And even though you do your best to stay productive, stay focused on the future and work on your own game, it's hard to use that time efficiently. So I don't know what they've been doing. I don't know what they've up to. I know they've had a boot camp come in here prior to Copenhagen, but I really feel like for their sake, they need to find some success, some sort of accomplishment, some sort of confirmation that what they're doing, what they're trying to do is working. I don't know if this 5 would stick together if they were to just be eliminated immediately here in Copenhagen. Of course, I'm no one to make any decisions for them, but it would be very dire.
It's also something Yekenda touched on yesterday after the match, that they played like the old G2 despite having this month of preparation. You touched on it yourself, but should they have shown better signs of improvement?
Well, I'd say post-day one analysis is always a little bit dicey. I think they were rusty at the very beginning of the series against Liquid. You could see they got caught off guard quite a lot. Mirage was much more competitive. Had we gone to a third map, maybe we would have seen a different type of G2. I still think that their playstyle and their ideology relies heavily on individuals doing what they have to do, and it has its pluses and minuses. When you have people like Monacy or Nico popping off, then of course Counter-Strike is much easier. When they don't and where they are in difficulty, I think G2 haven't showed us yet that they can rely on a couple of great principles or great strategies to help their players get into the groove. That's the issue for me. To be honest, you look at what FaZe did at the major, and it's a little bit of the same. When individuals don't show up, they struggle. So I think they rely heavily on their players stepping up.
G2's now former coach Ectes has said following his exit from the team that he felt useless in G2 and that it's not the coach who drives G2. What is your take on this?
I honestly have no idea what he means because I don't know how his relationship was with the player. I know Remy Ectes has a very interesting way to look at a game, and I think wherever he is in a team, his voice is supposed to be heard. But I don't know if it was unilateral or if he just didn't find a way to see eye to eye with Alexby or with Nico, whoever is important in the center of that conversation. So I don't exactly know what he means. I can imagine that if he felt like his impact wasn't actually acted on the game, it would be frustrating and you feel like maybe your energy is going to waste. But he would be the guy to actually talk to.
We've seen a lot of different rosters in G2 and a lot of star players and a lot of IGLs. Do you think there's a cultural problem inside the G2?
It's tough to say. I think people might exaggerate the negative impact that a guy like Nico might have. I think it's a storyline that we've been writing to the extreme. I think he's reined it in a lot, and I also think Hunter is an excellent player to have. He's an excellent team player to have. So it's quite strange for me to explain what is happening to them. I still think that the Huxi pickup was a risky one in the sense that we didn't have a great sample size. Like all we had seen were the 2 great major runs he had with Copenhagen Flames. And it's true, at the time with these boys, he'd done something quite impressive. But over the course of the year, it was a little bit hot and cold. I think they took a risk. They took a gamble on what he could deliver, and it hasn't really paid off massively. But you could argue that JKS was very much the same. We saw him shine in Katowice when he had to step in for FaZe. And it's true, individually, he impressed a lot of people. But again, the sample size was small. So I think there was a little bit of a gamble in the moves and the roster moves that G2 put forth. Doesn't end up paying for now. They have a little bit of time ahead of them to make us wrong.
It's not your decision, of course, but How long would you give this setup?
Well, again, if we are not seeing very quickly signs of improvement, if they are eliminated here very early on at the fall finals, if they cannot make it to World Final, which you cannot quote me on that because I'm not aware of the leaderboard exactly. So there might be a way for them to play in Abu Dhabi at the end of the year. But I think we should be looking at improvement extremely soon. If they were to bow out today against Fluxo in the best of three, it might be time to revisit because now it's been a few months together. And it has been complicated to say the least. So I wouldn't push it too far. I think it might be just time to. And sometimes it's okay to just take your chip, leave the casino, and say, "Listen, we tried. It's not working, and let's rethink the approach."
Not talking about this current roster only, but also in a general perspective. It's 3 years since the last title in CS:GO.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable for such a big organization like G2?
I know, it's crazy, right? It sounds wrong, but also it is true. I guess when you have someone like Nico, he's lacking titles criminally in the last few years. Same could be said about Zaiwu, so I have to be careful where I step in here. But it's true. You would imagine a team with Nico should be winning more than they are now. I also think that Monesi remains one for the future. Not that he isn't strong now, but I think he might get to a much bigger magnitude later on. So if I'm G2, I'm just holding on extremely strongly to that Hunter, Nico, Monesi triumvirate of doom. I think they're a very safe bet to have. It's maybe just the two other pieces that need rethinking. But, they might just make a lie out of me and put it all the way to the Roll Arena. We'll see what happens today.